Good morning. The sun is shining and the sky is very blue, and I'd like to welcome the audience today to the first edition of On the Streets. And this is people who've called me, who are calling me, giving me information on all sorts of different subjects, and I'm taking that information wherever they happen to be and wherever I happen to be. And it's on the streets, so you may well hear a few cars in the background. You might well get a noisy motorbike, but that's all part of this series. So welcome to episode 1, and I'm joined by a lady who's going to be speaking about what she's seeing happening in schools around the COVID-19 precautions and lockdowns and face masks. So hello, thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, morning, Brian. Thanks for inviting me on. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. How would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, well, I'd rather not give my name for this interview, so I'll describe myself as a very concerned parent who lives in South Devon, who has 2 children at 2 different secondary schools.
Okay, and you've been observing things for quite a long time now, and you're obviously very concerned with some of those. So start where you like to. Tell us what you've been seeing happening in schools and around the children with respect to the COVID regulations.
Okay. Thank you. Well, just a very short bit about my background. I have lived a previous life of a real hardcore campaigner, shall we say, and I put those days behind me because it really compromised my health severely, and I said I'm never going to be a warrior again, but I'm afraid this is too important not to speak out on, and I'm really glad to have this opportunity because I don't think the majority of parents are quite understanding the reality of what's going on behind the scenes regards to our children in the education system. So I felt it was important to share my experience to hopefully awaken a few more people so that parents do start to question, and those that have questioned and can't understand why they're not getting anywhere, they need to understand why this is. So I'll just go through my story. I've made a few notes here in case I miss a vital element of it. So I've got 2 children at 2 different senior schools. And as we all heard back in February, Boris Johnson came out and said that they were going to be enforcing face masks in classrooms. So I was horrified at this, thinking my children are going to have to wear face masks all day. Now, I'm face mask exempt. I haven't worn a face mask through this whole thing since last year. I certainly don't want my children wearing them. So when I heard this, I sent emails to both school head teachers, and I'll refer to them as School 1 and School 2. So School 1, the head teacher sent an email out quite quickly advising parents that he was going to be enforcing face masks in classrooms. The School 2 hadn't sent an email out at that time, so I focused my energy on the first school, and I must have sent, it must have been half a dozen emails, and I was very polite. I sent links to so many articles, research documents about the dangers, what I perceive to be the dangers of prolonged face mask wearing. So I didn't really get much joy from any of that. And then we had a public announcement from Nick Gibb, who is I believe his correct title is the Minister of State for School Standards. And he came out and said, we're not enforcing face masks in classrooms. And I thought, well, thank God for that. So then I emailed both schools again after the new announcement. So I received a response on the 26th of February from School 1, who said, it was a very short reply, Now the minister has come out and said that we will not be enforcing face masks in classrooms. So I was really relieved. So this was a week before return to school on the 8th of March. So I emailed the head teacher back and said, I assume now that you will be emailing all parents to let them know about this reverse decision. So it got to the middle of the week and nothing had happened. So I went on to the Facebook page of the Parents Association for that particular school. It was a very short post just saying, just to let everybody know, the head has changed the decision on face masks in classrooms all day. Anyway, time went by and my post hadn't appeared, so I messaged the admin of that group, and they came back to me to say they'd taken that post to the head teacher and they were blocked from posting it, and they were told it was, in quotation marks, too controversial. And I was saying, what's controversial about this? The decision has been changed. I've got an email. How is this controversial? Anyway, they wouldn't put this post up. So this is a week before we go back to school. And then on the Friday, an email came through at 4:32 p.m. saying it was like I can't remember the whole content. It was quite long, and it presented itself like a safeguarding document. And testing was mentioned, masks were mentioned, saying we are enforcing masks in classrooms. And I'm thinking, well, a week ago you messaged me, you emailed me to say you weren't doing this. So I went nuts. And I spent that weekend, I'm thinking, well, first of all, fancy sending this out at the end of a school day, just at the cusp of the weekend where you can't get hold of anybody and we've got school on Monday. And I'm thinking, this is a typical approach of solicitors and different things like that, where they deliberately send a letter out so it lands in your house at Saturday morning and you're sweating it until Monday till you can speak to somebody. So it was no surprise, I suppose, it came at that time of day. But anyway, I must have spent at least 6 hours compiling a very detailed email, which was read. And the message I got back was a very short one of, I've already told you your child does not have to wear a mask in classrooms. So I'm thinking, well, the document you've just sent out to parents, it's implying that they have no choice. There was nothing mentioned from memory in those emails that would make people think they had a choice. And it actually said, it sort of presented itself as if you don't abide by these rules, that's the masks and the testing, it said there would be serious sanctions. Now, that to me is possible exclusion from, what I consider academically is a very, very good school, I've got to say. So I suffer a lot with anxiety, and all this has made me seriously ill, and I'm just thinking, my child is going back Monday, what am I going to do? And I wasn't going to sign this document to say I accepted the rules, because there's no way I was going to let my child be tested or wear a mask. So I didn't sign anything. And, so the reply I got back was, well, I've already told you that your child doesn't have to do this. So the other thing I pointed out to the head was they'd had a week to send a letter out to parents or an email to advise them on the reverse of decision. Why did they not do that? And the reply I got was, it's up to me how I communicate with my parents.
Yeah, so this is quite a high-handed approach, isn't it?
It is.
A lot of people are saying that they're getting this type of treatment from all sorts of organisations. It might be a local authority or a school or the NHS. But yeah. you are treated as though you are, well, unimportant.
Yeah. So I'm now going to just flick to school 2. So while all this was going on, I didn't have an emailed reply from the head teacher of that school. They had the courtesy to actually phone me. and they said that I was the only parent that they were going to ring, which is why I'm not giving my identity today, because it would be very obvious who I am. And if they do listen to this, they'll know it's me anyway, but I don't want to cause problems for my children. But this head teacher rang me and said that I'd written so eloquently, and they'd had emails from parents saying, if you put my child in a mask, you are a child abuser. And I've got to say, I don't particularly like this head teacher. I never have. I've had my moments with this person. But I've got to say, in his defence, he was sounding shaken. And at one point, he stopped speaking and paused, and then he said, I'm so sorry, but I'm so emotional. And my heart went out to this person. And I said, it's okay. And they were clearly distressed. So they told me that they'd gone as high as they could possibly go to try to stop masks in this school. And I was told there was nothing they could do. I've been told that they were aware of all the template letters that were being sent to head teachers around the country. I think there's an organisation called Lawyers for Liberty who are sending letters out to head teachers, making them aware they're personally liable for future health complications of children and staff. So I've been told that these letters are being collated nationally. Now, I can't remember where. So to me, with the knowledge I've got on Parliament, that would scream out to me that they are psychologically analysing how parents are, the strength of feeling, their next move, what can they get away with next. That's how I would interpret that. The head teachers were being told to contact their insurance companies. Now again, Lawyers for Liberty, they're writing to head teachers about personal liability. Is that why heads are being told to contact insurance companies? I was told there's a huge pressure from government level, unions and local education authorities. And the only way this person could get around the masks was to offer lanyards. And I said, but my child isn't exempt from wearing one. And the head said to me that if they're wearing one, nobody can ask why they're wearing one. And this person had purchased loads of lanyards. Now, at that point, they said they didn't know how many children would take that up. And now I wear a lanyard when I go out. Legally, I know I don't need to. It's on the government website. You don't need to wear this label around your neck. But because of my anxiety, I just want to avoid confrontation and get about my business, what I'm doing. So after this conversation, this threw a whole new light on it for me. And then it was around this time I came across a video online from another alternative news channel where this company interviewed a man called David Perks. That's Perks for anybody that wants to look it up. He's a principal at a science college, I believe, which is based in North London. And he's on this interview saying basically I don't know whether it's high up at government level or local education authority, I'm not sure, but they've said, if you do not get the majority of your children in face masks, we are going to remove the lease of your sixth form building. And I'm thinking, oh my God. So you've got a principal of this science college now has been interviewed, coming out and saying it. And then with my conversation with head teacher of school too, I'm just thinking this is just shocking. So I'm just looking at my notes.
If I can just come in at this point, you have taken this interest in the subject of the masks and what's happening with the children at school because you've been concerned about the effects of the masks.
Yeah.
And I believe that the wearing of a mask has been a particular problem for your own children.
Yeah.
Something that they don't like. Without giving too much away, are you able to explain why?
the school one who's come across, very heavy-handed. My child is as far as I'm aware, is the only child in the whole of that school not wearing a face mask. I mean, and that is not a good place to put your child in. But they're in sixth form now. They're older, my child said to me, "You've put so much effort into this, Mum. I'm not going to let you down." And they've I'm so proud. I couldn't have done that when I was 17. I wouldn't have had the courage to have done that. Now my other child is in year 9, and that's not so easy. They're not as mature as his sibling. So my youngest child is wearing a face mask in school, even though that head is doing everything they possibly can so that my child doesn't have to. Now, the risks of them, I'm not a medical trained person, but what I've been reading and watching and listening to, I'm getting more and more horrified. Now, I'll just touch on before I go on about that is I asked School 1 for a copy of their risk assessment. I wanted to see what risk assessments the schools are doing for prolonged mask wearing and testing. So they emailed it back quite quickly. There is not one thing in that document referring to what could happen if you wear a mask all day, what will happen if you're repeatedly having something shoved up your nose and down your throat. There is nothing. So I went back to the school and said, there isn't anything in this document about this. And the response I got to that was, we're not medically trained to conduct a risk assessment. We have been told to follow the government guidance on this. So from all the things I'm seeing from the various campaign groups that are fighting all of this, it appears the government have not even done a risk assessment on this, unlike other countries.
I can add to that directly because UK Column quite some months ago went down this path of asking the question about risk assessments, and we eventually discovered, if my memory is correct, there was a Labour MP had also asked questions about this. It was clear that the government had not done a risk assessment. And so we're in a very interesting position here, aren't we? Because the school is saying, well, we're not medically qualified. Well, they could do a risk assessment to the point where they can comment sensibly as professionals on what they think the risks could be, and they could submit that draft risk assessment to other authorities better qualified, so they could start the process. So what they're doing initially is fobbing you off. That's one thing. But the second thing is, of course, that they're demonstrating that they're not prepared to think anymore with common sense or with a professional input. All they are doing is saying, we were told, the government told us, so we're doing it. And the other thing I'll just bring in here, if I may, is that a little while ago I was able to speak to a person, trained psychotherapist, working with a local authority, and in particular dealing with children with a lot of special needs, many of them foster or adopted children who were with new families, but even those families needed the assistance of this person in order to help things progress and stabilise. And the individual said to me that their own personal professional analysis of what was happening in schools with the wearing of face masks and the social distancing and the constant drumming into the children of pandemic and fear, they said that this, in their professional opinion, is abuse of the children and is in abuse of and is in breach of the authorities' own rules on child abuse. So this individual was horrified at what was going on, because they're saying everything to do with their professional training says all of these things, the mask, the social distancing, the fear factor, is damaging the mental health of the children. But if you sum it all up as a package, what it is saying is that by implementing it, the local authority, as an education authority, is abusing its own children.
Totally, yeah. I mean, school one, that head teacher said in an email to me, 99% of my school are compliant. And my reply to that was, would they be if you had sent that email out as I'd asked, advising them that you'd changed your mind? You wouldn't have reached your target if you'd have sent that email. Now, the thing is, did he choose not to send that email, or was he told not to? I don't know. So, with regards to how I see the dangers of things, I only recently discovered in February a condition called mask mouth. I'd never heard of it. And I looked it up on the internet after listening to a podcast of a dentist in this country. And I'm thinking, what the hell? And I found an article in the Washington Post in the States, August 2020, where dentists were reporting a sharp increase of tooth decay and gum disease in people and children because of the wearing of the masks for long periods of time. So mask mouth is, from how I understand it from reading all these things, is when your mouth is dry, which is what happens when you can't breathe properly. When your mouth is dry and the saliva's all gone, that's what leads to these conditions. And more alarmingly than that is it can lead to strokes and cardiac and respiratory illness. Now, all these things won't become apparent probably en masse until, I don't know, a year or more down the line. I mean, it reminds me of like the asbestos thing. I'm thinking, is this going to be like the future scandal? And then you'll have a government official on TV saying, we're so sorry, we didn't realise. Well, I'm not going to swear now, but they did bloody realise, because I've sent that article, I've sent it to both head teachers, the podcast and of this UK dentist, and the America article. I've sent it to both head teachers. I've sent it to Gavin Williamson, Nick Gibb, and the Director of Public Health. They all have that information. Not one person has commented on it. I've spoken on the phone to a journalist at the Telegraph and the Guardian. None of them have reported on it. They asked me to send them links. I've emailed them. No national media are reporting on mask mouth. So that is a major concern for me. And
can I just interject here again? I can tell our viewers, our listeners, that in conversations that I am having now on a daily basis with principally nurses who are speaking out about what they are seeing happening, many of those nurses are warning about bad effects from mask wearing, and in particular they are saying that it's exceptionally onerous for them because, of course, many of them are working extremely long shifts. They're doing 14-hour shifts where they're expected to be wearing a mask for the whole of that time. So to reinforce what you were saying about medical risks, I can say that we are now getting many people from within the NHS itself warning of the adverse medical risks of long-term wearing of face masks.
Yeah, I mean, the dentist in the UK, and I can always send you the link, I may have sent it before, but he talks about masks and the different types, because the argument you get from people who are pro-masks, they say, well, my dentist wears them, the surgeon wears one in the operating theatre, what's your problem? We're not worried about it. And he explains this, and he says, as a health professional, you wear a mask. It is indoctrinated into you. Once that mask is on, you do not touch it. Your hands are purely for your surgical instruments, and they're regularly changed. And he talks about all of this. He says, but the public, they're crunching them up. They're in their pockets. They're hanging off their wrists. They're hanging off their handbag. They're on their chin. They're on their face. They're off their face. And it's just breeding ground for bacteria. And not to mention the fibres that you breathe. So it's just awful. Now, for me as a mother, when I took my child to school number 2 with the really empathic head teacher, I was making it worse for my child by getting in a state. They were quite happy to wear a mask. And I said, look, okay, you can go back today and you can wear one, but you change it. Every lesson, you change that mask, you have a drink of water, you keep your mouth moist. And I'm thinking, what else can I, I'm not a doctor. And I said, you see how many children in the school have lanyards on. And if there's a lot, I want you to think about not wearing this. Now, the head teacher called him out of lesson and he gave him a lanyard. But my child will still not wear one. And that head teacher has rung me twice since and said, I'm trying here. And so they said to me, well, if I give a photo of your child to all the staff, they don't even have to wear the lanyard. They won't be challenged. And I said, that is not the point. The point is my child is in the minority and they don't want to be. And we know the government know what they're doing. They know how children's minds work. They don't want to be the odd one out. I'm dropping my child at school, driving off, sobbing all the way home. And this head teacher said to me, in fairness, your child did look happy in the lesson. They were turning and engaging with their peers. They weren't distressed, and I chatted to them, and they were so polite, and they were credit to you. But what these head teachers are missing, despite all this information I've been sending them about the health risks, this is not how a child is presenting on the outside. What is going on in the inside of their body health-wise?
Yes, and also what is going on inside their minds. You're touching on the issue of peer pressure and wanting to conform, because if you don't conform in a school environment, you're likely to be picked on. And these were some of the key points that the psychotherapist was talking about, that the impact of all these things on the mental health of children in particular is extreme. And they also said to me that it's clear that there is a massive increase in stress and anxiety and mental health problems, particularly in young people. And I have been speaking in the last couple of days with specialist mental health NHS staff who are also talking about the immense adverse effect on people's mental health as a result of what's going on, and the fact that, of course, there is no wider publicity about all these risks and the damages and the effects. So they were quite horrified. I will be making the information that I've been given public very soon, but it's clear that health professionals, NHS professionals, mental health professionals are all saying that we've got an explosion in mental health problems, much of which has been caused by the whole of the COVID lockdown, mask wearing, social distancing and everything else. It's the fear factor of the COVID policy.
Yeah, I agree, and for me with the mental health side, this is why I'm not forcing my child not to wear a mask, because it's the worst of two evils. Because if I force them not to wear one, they are going to be really unhappy and distressed because all their friends are wearing them, and so I'm having to let them do this, knowing I'm potentially damaging their health. I mean, it's horrendous. And then if I said, no, you're not wearing one, and they're wearing a lanyard, their mental health is going to be worse. And their physical health will be better, but their mental health will just deteriorate.
Yes, and what you are demonstrating in telling this is that, of course, the pressure is also coming back on you. So it's not just an effect that simply lands on the children, because you're having to deal with it as well. That is also affecting you, and I'm going to say stressing you to some extent. And so
I mean, the biggest shock. I mean, I know how the government works, and I think out of all this last year and with the schools, the biggest shock has been to me that the majority of parents aren't even questioning. They're not even questioning. And I mean, the admin of the school number one, the Facebook Parents Association, I sent them a message, and I said, I can't believe they've blocked this post. And I said, I have all links to the stuff I've sent this head teacher. If you want them, this parent didn't even want to look at it. They didn't want to look at it. And then they came back to me and said, my child is obviously clearly having the test and wearing masks. They needed to go back to school for the good of their mental health. And I said to this mother, but what you're doing could actually be damaging your child's mental health. They did not have a clue. But even now, they're privately messaging me, agreeing with all I'm saying, but they're not challenging the school over it.
No, well,
that's the shocking thing to me, is that parents are just trusting, and I think after the last year, they've been so programmed now and brainwashed, they're just believing everything, and I find it unbelievable.
Well, this is into the key subject now, because, of course, the government is absolutely brainwashing the population, and that's why they have the Behavioural Insights team, and that's why we know from the March the 22nd minutes from the government's Behavioural Insight team that they recommended increasing fear in the population in order to get people to adhere to all their policies. That was a direct attack on people's mental health, but we'll have to cover that in another segment. So I'd like to say, to finish, one, will you send us some of the links that you've mentioned? I probably can find the Washington Post one, but mask mouth, that was particularly interesting. So if you can send through some of those links, and I can add them into this segment for those people who listen to it as a sort of video.
And I'll just say a very short word. I won't expand on it, but the testing swabs, none of my family are ever going to be tested, but, the risks of that. Now, recently, there was a lot circulating about a substance called ethylene oxide. I'll send you links on that. It is used as a pesticide, and it's associated with cancer, particularly stomach and breast cancer. I've sent, again, everybody I've mentioned before have had links on the potential dangers of those swabs, and everybody's disregarding it. You're putting a cancer-causing substance up your child's nose. I mean, it just beggars belief. I think a message to the school campaigning groups out there, I don't actually know the answer, but they're targeting the head teachers. Well, for we've seen now, for months they've been doing this, it is not bringing the outcomes that you all want. And you're going about it the wrong way. And it reminds me of my campaigning with Parliament. No matter how much these people may want to help the parents, they are being controlled with fear, and they will not do what parents want them to do. So how they target this and change it, I don't know, but my message is I would stop targeting the head teachers. I don't know whether that's right or wrong. And just to summarise now, these are the choices of parents right now. You keep your children home, they miss more education, and you get a fine. You home educate. Not all parents can do that. They're working. They can't afford tutors. I couldn't home educate my children. I'm not academically at that level to feel confident to do so. You go to school without a mask and you risk confrontation with teachers and your child getting bullied. Or they go to school in a mask and you are, as a parent, knowingly placing your child's health at risk. And my final message is teachers, nurses, doctors, consultants, GPs, police, we need unity. Forget the big protests. They will make no difference. The government are laughing at you. It is as simple as collectively you come together and you just simply say no.
Well, I think that's a very powerful statement, and I would certainly agree with that. It's got to be challenged everywhere by every person. I want to add a little bit about the head teachers and local authorities. What I discovered recently was that when you questioned a local authority about the risks to the mental health of children, of the masks and the distancing, etc., one of the replies that I got was, well, we don't actually have much authority over what's happening. And I was very surprised at this, and I said, why? What do you mean? You are the local education authority. And they said, but the thing is that many of these schools are academy schools, and they are responsible for their own policies. We don't have any jurisdiction over them. And that was a very big eye-opener to me, because I've watched the rise of the academy schools, particularly when an academy school starts off as a school and then it seems to hoover up a variety of other schools, and they become in a sort of federation of schools. So what I think the local authorities are saying is correct, that actually the power base for what happens in these schools that are designated academies, they are entirely a law unto themselves. And I think this is something that people should be aware of. But I totally agree with you that marches are all very well, but if we had enough people saying no, challenging what's happening, whether they're police or nurses or even teachers or head teachers, this is where the result starts. Lastly, I've got to ask, have you spoken to your MP at all?
Yeah, I've liaised with my local MP and my MP of the heavy-handed school number 1. And that MP of school number 1, their office emailed me back and said, because I was tagging them in the emails, please do not tag us in any more emails. And if you do write to this MP, they will not reply to your communications, because they totally agree with what the government are doing. My personal MP has just said, I'll take all your issues to the Minister. Well, I've dealt with my MP before in my campaign work, and I don't trust her as far as I could throw her, so I'm not holding out any hope there. And I'm just going to read this out before the battery goes on my tablet, because I've just had some news come in. Did you know the German lawyer won his court case that face masks cause serious health issues and social distancing mental health complications through the German courts? All German schools are now stopping these measures on the back of a court case. So that's just come into me now.
Right. Well, that is amazing, and thank you for sharing that. I would just add that with MPs, my view on MPs is it's very, very important that people communicate with their MPs. They write the letters, they say what their concerns are, they submit evidence. This is an important thing, that where you've got documentary evidence or factual information from personal experience, that is all submitted to the MP. And this means that when they respond with a fob-off letter, and many of them are sending, the constituency letters are being sent into the Conservative Party central office, where they are processed and template replies are sent back to the MPs. We know this is happening, but when you receive one of these template replies, you can write back to the MP and say, when this breaks surface at whatever time in the future, you will be fully culpable, because you will have been told what was happening and you did nothing. You will stand and be brought to account yourself.
And I do believe they all will, Brian. I think everybody who's been complicit in all of this at all levels, in all different sectors, their time will come. I just know.
Yes.
And we've just got to ride out what's happening, do the best we can. We all have our own roles to play, and I feel I'm going to cry now, but I don't have a lot of time to tune into your programmes every day. But I've known you several years now, and I just think you and your team, you're awesome. You're providing such a valuable service, and you're really. So I'm getting all tearful now, because I know how hard it is to do what you're doing, because I've been there on a different platform, but total hats off and respect to you, and I'm just so proud of you, and I know the pressure that you're under at the moment, so I'm just really grateful to have a voice for all our children on your programme.
Okay, well, thank you very much for calling in this morning. It's been really excellent, and once again, I'm going to say to end this. You're another lady that's called in. I am seeing that across the country, it is all the women who are standing up to fight. It's the nurses who are coming forward. It's the grandmas who are doing things. And I think that what we're starting to see is the women stepping forward in a very fearless way to defend the children. So to the men out there, particularly the men who are in positions of power and influence, it's time that you got off your backsides and stopped being frightened rabbits and did something about what this lady is telling us, and of course many other ladies, whether they're in the NHS or school teachers or psychotherapists. I'm ending with...
Our elderly and young, they haven't got a voice, and we all have to be there for them and fight for them, really. And I'm just pleading to everybody who's in these positions of power. You've got to... I just wish in some ways the teachers would break away from the government-led education system and set up community teaching hubs. That's what I would like to see. Yeah,
well, that's a great subject for another discussion. But I'm going to thank you very much for joining me
you, Brian.
this morning.
Thank you.
It's been really excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.